aspect. Not one person alone cannot put their personal signature on every single solitary aspect of the entire creation, and it's, completely. Say, I made this part of creation, reveal God. I mean, not you. One person can't do everything. You need everybody. You need the physicists and the mathematicians and the scientists and the psychologists and the botanists and the zoologists. You need everybody.
So the non-believers eventually become believers through the manifestation of God's miracles. Jonas Salk discovered a cure for polio.
There's one way is miracles, and some people come to know God by looking inside themselves, saying, "Where does all this come from? This creativity, this imagination." The Elie Wiesel, who just died, went to the Rebbe. You read this article? Mm-hmm. He went to the Rebbe and he said, "How could you believe in God after the Holocaust?" So the Rebbe said to him, "How could you not?" He said, "Explain yourself." And the Rebbe said, "It's not that I don't feel the horror and I'm not angry at what happened." And he said, "But if you are demanding an answer from Hashem, how could you do this?" Which, right, he says, you're making two assumptions. A, you truly believe there's Hashem, otherwise you wouldn't ask that question. And B, you really believe Hashem is all loving and cares for humanity, or you wouldn't ask that question. So which one is it? And Elie Wiesel made peace, so to speak, with Hashem, and wrote a beautiful letter about how he, instead of now saying, how could God do this to humanity, he said, how could humanity do this to God? Right? So, clearly Hashem gives us a lot of freedom to do our own thing, and when there's a lot of freedom, there's a lot of mistakes. Okay, now let's go into, are we ready? Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this. This will take 5 minutes. You can take this home and make a study of it yourself. Pass these out. This, what you are getting now, is a little diagram, here's more, of the architecture of the Beis HaMikdash. Do you know how the Jewish people today, as we get closer and closer to what we feel the coming of Mashiach, we feel like everything is moving in that direction. There's a huge drive, a tremendous urge for the many people among the Jews to go up on the Temple Mount, correct? In fact, this Hallel who was killed, remember? I just read, and that's a little distressing to me, because I think it's very dangerous, that to honor her memory, there was like a whole pilgrimage up onto the Temple Mount. Okay? The truth is that's a controversial issue, and maybe even practically speaking a very dangerous thing, but we have a way.
Well, didn't the family denounce it? Her mother denounced it.
There is a tremendous urge to go up on the Temple Mount. What's driving us is that's our place, that's our temple. I mean, it's like, you know what it's like to see the mosque up there when you really are connected to Eretz Yisrael, to Am Yisrael, of course the Torah. You see the mosque there where there could be a Beis HaMikdash. It's like somebody, lahavdil, raping your chas v'shalom, your mother in front of you. You know what I mean? Like, it's very hard to see the mosque there when we know it should be there. And there's a tremendous, now that we're back in Israel and the people are devoting themselves to building the land, it is extremely difficult to restrain oneself from pushing for return to the Beis HaMikdash. However, it's a very dangerous game. We don't have to go into that. Chazal, we have for a very long time, for almost over 2,000 years, 2,400 years, we have a way to virtually go up on the Temple Mount. The secret to the Siddur is that it has a seder, it has an order. The order of the prayer directly relates to the architecture of the temple on the Temple Mount. You will see that every section of prayer is directly related and a kind of like virtual version of the actual Temple Mount and the progression from the outer courtyard to the most innermost chamber. That's actually what prayer is. It's a virtual experience of going back to the temple. Okay? Now, here's how it starts. If you know the order of the prayer, this will make sense. If not, you'll process it a little bit and you go back and look at a prayer book and look at all the sections and you'll see what we're speaking about. The first part of prayer, okay, which is a compilation of various poems and songs, like Adon Olam, which we will get to in a few minutes, okay? This is all before we get to the 15 morning brachot, okay? All of these piyutim that we add in the early parts of prayer, they are associated with what is the outer courtyard, okay? The outer courtyard in yours is here, okay? The round 15 steps are here. You see that? You see the round 15 steps? We'll get there soon. The outer courtyard was called, it will be called, the Ezrat Nashim, the women's gallery. Only everybody gathered there, but once a year on Sukkot, in the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, when there was big dancing and parties, they had men and women coming, so they eventually, well, the Gemara tells us there was a couple of trials and errors. First they had, I think, the women in front and the men in the back. So the women had to walk through the men. They decided that wasn't a good idea. So then they put the women in the back and the men in front, but they didn't like the men walking through the women. And then they made a balcony and everybody was happy. And the women went up to the balcony. So shuls that have a balcony are the most like the Beit HaMikdash, by the way. In any case, this was referred to as the Ezrat Nashim. This is where the big parties took place on Sukkot. And here's where everybody would gather before the doors of the Beit HaMikdash would open, and they would say their piyutim. This is where Adon Olam comes in. As we said, we'll see in a minute. Now, next, there are 15 steps, you see, leading up to huge doors, which were called the doors of Nicanor. They were called that because in the Second Temple, someone who donated gorgeous, magnificent, enormous doors was called Nicanor, and there was a whole big story about how we put him on a boat, and they were from Egypt. They had to come around, I guess. And they had to, I guess they didn't have the Suez Canal, and whatever. There was a long boat trip, I guess, getting them from Egypt to Jaffa. I don't know. Anyway, so there was a storm and they had to throw him overboard. I'll make a long story short, and he was so miserable that he worked so hard, and he had devoted himself to building these doors for the temple. And when the boat came ashore, the doors had washed up on shore, and they were able to anyway, these are the doors of Nicanor. The 15 steps, and we'll go through this in more detail, are related to the 15 morning brachot. There are 15 brachot, and now you understand why there's 15 brachot, because if you look in the Gemara, there's a set of 3, and there's a set of 12 in 2 different places, and they're not connected. But Chazal put them all together to make 15. Okay, the first 3 and the first 3 of Goy, Eved, and Isha have nothing to do with the last, with the remainder. You see, they're very different in style, and we'll get to them next week. But they're 15. They made 15 here. Okay. When you walked up these 15 steps, you got into what is called the Ezrat Yisrael. It's an area that had a small wall in front of it. You could see the small yellow wall. Here is where only the Jewish people would come. Everybody, non-Jews too, could all come to the Ezrat Nashim, and they could bring their sacrifices and send them through with the Leviim to the Kohanim to be offered. But the Jewish people came to this small yellow wall. It was called the Ezrat Yisrael. It wasn't that big.
Non-Jewish people came?
Sure, well, many non-Jewish people came.
Why?
For everybody. You say it in Beit you say it every Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Ki Beiti Beit Tefillah Yikareh Kol Ha'amim. It's for everybody. And Shlomo Melech's prayer when he built the temple was, "This shall be the place of prayer for all nations," and it will be. And all the prophets, Yeshayahu and all the latter-day prophets, all speak about the streaming of the nations in the end of days to the temple to pray. And even today, you see the whole wide world comes to the Western Wall. It always was like that. However, the Jewish people go into Ezrat Yisrael, and you see, after we make the brachot, women often don't say this stuff, but there's many, many little paragraphs about how we are your nation who've accepted your Torah, and we say Shema Yisrael, and like distinguishing what we've chosen as our mission from the rest of the world who have declined this mission. Now, beyond the Ezrat Yisrael, okay, is going to be the Ezrat Kohanim and the Mizbeach. This is the whole section that the Chazal put in about the Karbanot. There's a huge section of Karbanot after, right, that we often don't say. Here, so where the Mizbeach is. This Mizbeach, okay, this is Ezrat Kohanim and the Mizbeach. This is the area where you sent your sacrifices through, and the Kohanim prepared them and did whatever they had to do with them, and there was daily sacrifices there also from the whole nation one in the morning, one in the afternoon, called the Tamid. And this corresponds to the section called the Carbonot, which is a long section. Now, after the section of the Carbonot, there are 13 steps. You see these steps? They're not depicted exactly correctly. There are 13 steps, ben ha-mizbeach la-ulam, or ben ulam la-mizbeach, between the mizbeach and the antechamber. The 13 steps correspond to the part of davening where we end the whole Carbonot section, and we say there are 13 ways 13 rules you must apply in your analysis of Torah. It's not a free-for-all. There's only 13 rules that can, intellectual checks and balances, like rules of how you can decipher what the law or what the Torah means. You have to fit it into one of these types of rules, such as, what are some of the rules? Kal v'chomer, such as gezerah shava, right? Different rules. Well, if we have to, we'll speak about them. Now, we're not going into too much detail because I want to get to just the main idea. Then you walk in through this huge entrance. You see it's here. In my picture, it's right here, this entrance. And there's a parallel entrance right here. This is the antechamber. There's two entrances, one into the antechamber and one, which is called the Ulam, the Great Hall, and one into the Heichal, which is where the actual temple vessels were. These two great openings were parallel. They were very, very high. The first one had 5 cornices. Okay? Notice that this is the Psuke de Zimra. Do you notice how Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach have certain similarities? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you start one and you end up in the other? Yes. These are the two openings. Okay? The two great doorways of praising Hashem, recognizing who we are part of, so that what is invested in us, as we just said, and what Hashem expects from us. And in here, we said there are 5 cornices. That's just one detail. There's many other details, but I'll give you an example. After Ashrei, there are 5 sections to the Pesukei de Zimra, which we're not going to get through in this course. There were chains hanging down from the ceiling, which represents the Shalshelet, the 5 Halalukas after Ashrei. There are many features in this Ulam which are represented in the prayer. Then you walk through the next great door, which was Yishtabach. You are in the section of what we call the Brachot before Shema. There are 2, and then Shema. There is the Mizbeach HaKetoret, the incense, the golden altar for the incense, which will represent Shema. And beyond that, the menorah and the shulchan, the candelabra and the table for the bread, which represent the 2 brachot before Shema. Why does Shema come first? Why do you come first to the golden altar with the incense, and then beyond that you have the menorah and the shulchan? That's not the order of prayer. Because only after the Kohen lit the menorah and fixed the bread, then he went and did the service on the Ketoret. So it went that way. And this is the 3 brachot getting to Shema. And notice that the golden altar is directly in line with the holy ark behind the curtain in the Holy of Holies. That is Shema to Shmona Esrei. Okay? And that curtain represents why we take 3 steps forward. The only reason we take 3 steps back is so we can take 3 steps forward into the Holy of Holies. That is where we say the Shemona Esrei. That is where, so to speak, God would speak through that ark to the people, where we feel God's investment in us. We relate to it. Then when we're done, we back out 3 feet. You do not have to go forward or jump 3 times. I don't know where that came from. You just back out 3 feet, and then we go, the rest of the prayer, you kind of go back out of the whole temple. So this is where you're at when you're praying. Now remember that it said in the Gemara that many people came to the temple, but everybody had their privacy. Okay, everybody had their sense of space. Okay, does this make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The 3 steps forward were taken at the parochet?
It's like going through. It represents our going into.
Okay, but it would, in theory, it would happen there?
No, in theory, the Kohen would go in only once.
So he would, it represents
only,
our entering the Kohen.
Yes. But the Kohen only went in on Yom Kippur. Okay, are we ready to spend a few minutes on Adon Olam, or do we have any comments or questions? So far, so good? Okay. Adon Olam Asher Malach. I want you to read it now or say it to yourselves. Everybody have a sitter that they can look at it. It is divided into clearly two sections. Tell me what the first section is about and the second section is about. And then tell me, based on what we said today, why do you think this is the piyut, the poem of choice to start our prayer?
Thank you. There's first that you for everything.
No. Go look very carefully. The first section and the second section. Not individual verses. You tell me what the first section is about, and then the section, and tell me what, based on what we said today, about our relationship with God, why this is like the piyut of choice. It was probably composed in the year 800, by the way, and added to the prayer. The Shemona Esther was composed much, much, much earlier. We're good.
It's just talking about like the infinite nature of Hashem and how he's
That's the first section.
right. Where does the second section start?
It clearly starts in, there's a clear demarcation line.
First it's about him, himself, and then it's our relationship with him.
Close. Yes, that would be, you could say it that way. It goes from the first half is clear. It's the grand scope of God, who has preceded all. Now we understand what that means. He brought everything into existence. We know what that means. Rules before there ever was an existence and after there would be an existence, right? Right? All this grandiose kind of, terminology and this kind of looking way beyond ourselves at the all-inclusiveness of Hashem, correct? Hashem includes all creation, all time.
It becomes personal.
And then it shifts, it just like shifts. Vohu Keli, V'chai Goali.
Individual.
My personal, private God that listens to me and talks to me. See, this is exactly what we said today. This is prayer. Prayer is what we're part of, something that encompasses everything, and nothing is outside of it. And therefore we're never forgotten and we're never ignored. And Hashem doesn't overlook anything, didn't make any mistakes, takes everything into consideration. Everything is intermingled and interwoven and interdependent. And yet, I'm part of something so huge, and yet I am an integral part of it, and God is directly concerned with me. The word Adon, okay? The word Adon, we are taught, was first introduced, first used. Who's the first person to call God Adon? My personal master. Avraham. It's the first person to use the term Adoni, my God, my personal God. In other words, Avraham brought to the world the notion that this great God, creator of all things, is personally involved with me. Not as an act of ethics and morals that he created me so he takes care of me because I'm other than God. We said that's not it. I'm so much a part of God. God's life force flows through me and yet gives me a separate existence so that I can cooperate, co-create with Hashem. And he wants my contribution and sustains me for my contribution that I'm going to make. Avram made quite a big contribution by bringing this idea to the world. But Avram is the one who calls Hashem Adon. Okay? I want to add one more thing. There's so much to speak about on the Adon Olam. We spend a lot of time on the intro and on the architecture. Maybe we'll continue a little bit next week. But Adon Olam. Okay, Olam. Olam means world. But what other word sounds very similar to Olam? Ne'elam, which means? Now, you tell me. Shem is the creator. In other words, everything is included and brought into existence within, so to speak, Hashem. But Hashem is Ne'elam in this Olam. What's
He's concealed.
why? We said, why is Hashem concealing himself? Why?
To enable us.
To give us the freedom to create. If God would come down, so to speak, or the word doesn't even come down, if God would stop concealing himself, so I would see the molecules in this cup, and I would see God's command that they should organize themselves in such a way that this will be a cup. How could I do anything? I'm overwhelmed with the sheer everythingness of God who controls everything. Where am I? There is no I. I vanish. So Hashem has to conceal himself, right? So that we can operate in this world and feel some type of stability and human, and trust in human effort. And believe that humans can do something here. That's unique, right? That's why Hashem is Ne'elam. So Hashem is, on the one hand, Adon, personally involved in me, but concealed from me, for my benefit. So I can do something here. Right? Make sense? And so then we speak about the all-inclusiveness of God, and we say that Hashem was past, present, and future. Let's just dwell on that for one moment, just to understand that. Very important, because it's a hard thing. What are we? Do we have a past?
Yeah.
Do we have a future?
Yeah.
Do we have a present?
Yeah.
Where is it?
No.
That's past. The second you process anything, it's past. Correct? We have no present. We have no present. It slips through our fingers like sand. You cannot hold the present. The second you grasp, the microsecond you process something, it's past. We have no present tense. When psychologists say, live in the present, it's a manner of speaking. Okay, scientifically it doesn't exist. There's no such thing for us. However, Hashem is entirely present. Now, here's a mashal. We see things moving from the future to the past. We see kind of like succession of events. We don't see the entirety of all events as a whole. Hashem sees the whole thing. Hashem is Hoveh. By the way, we call Hashem Havaya. It's not Yud Kei Vav Kei. Havaya. There was a book in England written in the 1800s, a famous novel called The Flatliners, dealing with this subject of how humans understand things. Imagine there was a planet, there was a world that was only two-dimensional. Okay, length and width. All right, that's all the people could see, length and width. They were all flat. And then suddenly, a three-dimensional object from another planet passed through their world. Okay, what would they see?
Cross-sections.
Cross-sections. There would be a series of cross-sections, and then it would be gone. They would have no capacity to see this as a single entity, correct? Mm-hmm. Time, for Hashem, is a single entity. We view cross-sections, moments, events. Hashem sees everything as a single fact, a single reality, a single dimension. Dimensions. We try to make sense of the succession of events that we are seeing. Okay? But we don't really know how to, because we don't have the capacity to see time as a single dimension. As if Hashem will see us in our infancy, in our youth, in our middle age, in our old age, as one entity. And that's why, by the way, you could always do tshuva. There is really no past for Hashem at all. And there's no future for Hashem. Hashem is entirely present. Everything is present. So when we say Haya, Hoveh, V'yehiyeh, was, will be, and is, we mean there is no divisions. And therefore we are continuously not bound by yesterday or by tomorrow.
They're human terms. Past, present, and future are human terms. They're not God
Correct.
terms. Because we have to see a cross-section.
Correct.
It's brilliant. That's Moshe Shapiro.
Actually, it's my father-in-law. That Hashem has only Hoveh.
My friend read the book, I don't know if anybody read it, he talked a lot about this. And he says that it's like we're in a tunnel, we see things going through the tunnel, that Hashem is standing outside the tunnel, and he sees the whole tunnel that's in the tunnel.
Either way,
What he talks about, which is so fascinating, and you alluded to it when you said Hashem's going to be a Kevavke, is that it's really the words of Hayah, Hoveh, V'yehiyeh, where you
correct.
transpose on top of each other, and if you put
Correct.
them on top, there's
Correct.
also the Yud, and it becomes...
Correct. And that is also the name of great mercy. That is the name of Chesed. Never confuse Chesed and Rachamim. Rachamim is a nice midah. It's ethics. Somebody doesn't have a leg, I'm walking by them on the street, I have compassion, I give them $1. That's called Rachamim. Okay? I do for the other because I have compassion, and I might even feel that the other is like me, but it's motivated by the other. Rachamim is motivated by the other. Chesed is nothing to do with it. Chesed is, what is chesed? Self-expansion. that overflows to benefit and give life of all sorts to everyone around us. And it's a flow, but everybody's doing this for everybody. Chesed is, and look at the word, look at the words of Shemona Esrei. First we speak about God's everythingness, and then we say, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Hakel, Hagadol, Hagibor, Hanora, Kel Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim. It's an overflow of everythingness. Does this make sense? Okay, we covered a lot of territory. We will continue.